Ben, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking the time. I'm very curious what drink you're drinking. You just took a sip, and it was not a clear liquid color.
The
Are you
multicolored drink.
yeah, what are you having at this hour of the of the morning?
Oh man, I am known though for the multicolored drink. I feel like because I would go into companies and I try to choose the color wisely. Sometimes it's green, sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's red. So before, like in the past, and you're getting a story now. Thanks for the question. Was Mio?
Great.
It was just like that simple kind of
Oh yeah,
energy
yeah, yeah.
squirt, and then it moved into an electrolyte, like a stir, because I did the whole blood test and analysis thing, and they said that I need more electrolytes. So now I drink more electrolytes. Little did I know that too much water, right, is actually not. More research is coming out that it's not very good. So you need to have your nutrients and minerals and such.
Yeah.
But then this is actually like a fit aid. This is an RX drink, so it has some
Okay.
creatine, some supplements and stuff in it with water, and then usually I have a green supplement in it, but I don't have it today. So I'm generally just drinking a bunch of stuff all day.
Hence the so for people listening, it's this I don't know peachy orange in a mason jar with a straw liquid that is full of nutrients. So appreciate the story. Thanks for that. That was not the first question I was planning to ask you. I'd like to have you introduce yourself, but before we even get there, to start off and just jump right in, I'd love to ask you what kind of role do you think fear plays in our lives?
Hmm. Well, some people are so afraid of what questions people are going to ask them or what they're going to see when they jump on a video call that they won't even drink their favorite drink, or they won't have a wallpaper behind them that is filled with the jungle. Like there are certain things that are around me that I purposely do, one, because they mean something to me, but because I want people to ask me questions about myself. And so fear can prevent us from being authentically us, which then prevents authentic connections, which then prevents aligned results in our life. So it basically interrupts serendipity, it interrupts success, and ultimately, I think, fulfillment, which then curates doubt, a lack of confidence. You don't have clarity because you're not working towards what you really care about, and you are operating in an environment that isn't aligned to you, so you have no control over your day to day. So I know I just kind of like made this the apocalyptic view of allowing fear to interrupt who you truly want to become, but it really is at the core of why we are not. And I use the word successful in quotes. It's at the core of us not living a life that helps us feel good and feel fulfilled.
Hmm. Which I think for without opening up a whole can of worms, I think that for a lot of people that could serve as a very effective definition.
I hope so. Uh, Overplayed a bit, but it's the journey, not the goal. It's not the top of the mountain because there's another mountain to climb after that.
Sure.
I think what's missing from that definition of fear interrupting success is that we're too focused on the outcome. Where fear prevents us from living. And so expanding this and not and putting only taking out one worm, and it's a gummy worm. It's not a real worm. Fear is it gets in the way of alignment, and alignment meaning we feel that we're able to show up as who we are because we know who we are, and do it confidently because we believe in ourselves and what we care about, and then able to make decisions based on that outside of social, societal pressures and doubt and such. That's success. Because ultimately, if you do that consistently, things are going to happen for you in a way that fulfills you or brings you joy. And success itself, like we're just saying, not the definition, but the achievement of a goal is just the result of showing up and doing things that you enjoy and that you love.
Hmm. Showing up, doing things that you love. Yeah. I don't.
And that are hard sometimes and
And
uncomfortable.
yeah, I think a lot of times things that you love probably were or become or have been hard at some point. I think challenge. It reminds me of when I was the COO of a mental health consultancy. We were trying to pull in more research into the work we were doing. And I was talking to I'll just call him a doctor. He had lots of degrees, It was alphabet soup, and I couldn't name all of the titles. But one of the things we were talking about was, we both had shared a research interest in resilience, and the bottom line from all of the years he had way more years studying this topic. Um, the bottom line was adversity. Was that adversity was an essential ingredient, some sort of hardship or challenge for growth, for resilience, and you can start to spin over into success and different kinds of metrics when you think of like Angela Duckworth and her all of her work on grit. And anyway, that goes into a totally different direction. But to come back to you and the word fear, I'm wondering, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself to the audience, and maybe this will help to shine a light on why I'm even asking you about about this topic.
Yeah. As you were talking about the adversity piece, what came to mind is like, let's say I want to go to the store down the street and I'm very excited about getting my favorite treat. Maybe it's like Siete chips or something. I'm from Austin, so Siete is a big brand. And it's raining. And the bottom sole of my shoe is coming off. But I really want to get that bag of chips. And so I go through that adversity of standing in the rain, walking with a flopping shoe down the sidewalk. And I get to the store and I get the bag of chips, and it's like, wow, okay, that was uncomfortable, but look at this thing that I just achieved and that I got. It's very fulfilling and satisfying. It makes me happy. Being willing to see that the rain is part of the journey to get the bag of chips is kind of what resilience and adversity is. It's not seeing it as something that's terrible or something that's getting in the way, but it's more so just an aspect of what you need to do to get to where you're going. And so it becomes something to enjoy, something that when you are in, you're saying, oh, this makes sense. I get it. I know why this is happening. And a lot of my own journey dealt with facing discomfort and disappointment. And then, despite that, right, staying value oriented and aligned and not seeing it as something to be the victim of, but an aspect of the game that we're all playing to achieve something that we want to achieve. And so becoming fearless is, and becoming the leader that's within, like the most important leader in your life, which means you're proactive towards the things that you care about, and you feel empowered and you feel accountable for creating the life that you want, is important to me because I faced a variety of different disappointments in my life. My first professional pursuit, wanting to be a professional soccer player, failed pretty miserably after a very, very difficult time with some success. My first major that I wanted to go into outside of soccer, nutrition, was canceled halfway through my program. My next passion and pursuit of health policy for 2.5 years after working in the field, 4 jobs were canceled after receiving the job offer. And then I ended up in healthcare with some pretty toxic and terrible leaders. But at that point, I already felt that work wasn't safe. And so I had this belief, this mindset, and generally this is what happens. It's not your external circumstances that dig the hole. It's the fact that you believe that you're in a hole that creates it and forces you down even further. But luckily, I ended up meeting a leadership mentor who kind of woke me up, who helped me realize that by thinking that I was in the wrong place just prevented the opportunity to make it right. And it made me get clear on what I wanted and who I was, build confidence in the fact that I existed and that was enough. And how do I want to become an expert in the space that I want to create a career in? And then how to build an environment, a community of friends, and my own lifestyle, my own habits that was going to serve that. And so I built the ladder. I climbed out of the hole, and I built the journey to where we are today. Because a lot of the things that came up from that who am I were coaching, professional, personal development, being fearless in your life, breaking free of the traditional 9-to-5 career that we think that we need to be in, and led me to go back and get my doctorate in organizational leadership, to take all my experiences in personal and life coaching and orient it towards career and leadership itself because it aligned with my degrees and background, and then to help people become fearless in their careers.
Which is probably why you wrote this book. For people listening, I'm holding up Becoming Fearless, which you graciously sent to me before recording. And I was telling you, I'll tell the audience, I'll admit, a horribly slow reader. I was never diagnosed, but my wife and I joke all the time that I must have some sort of reading comprehension issue or challenge. That was always my lowest grade in school, and yet I was surprised how quick of a read and how easy it was to understand and digest what was in this book. And I this could go in a lot of different directions, but part of the reason I suspect that is, other than I'm sure uh, hundreds, if not more, hours of the work that you put into writing and editing. Just I have worked with multiple authors, and I know what can go into a book. Even one that does actually, probably especially one that feels quick and easy to read. I think that's where the most work goes in, and I think in my experience, reading through this, I think part of the reason for me that it feels that way is because is probably because there's not it doesn't feel like, and I'm going to say this, I hope this doesn't come across as an insult because I mean it as a compliment. It doesn't feel like a doctor of organizational leadership wrote the book. It felt like a human who's lived life and experienced a lot of hardship and figured out how to overcome it is who wrote the book. Does that make sense? Or does that land?
That fills my heart up, because the only reason why I call myself doctor is because Dr. Benjamin Ritter is a very, very strong SEO name to use for the internet. Anyone listening to this as a coach, Google your name and see who you're competing against. So there were some Ben Ritters, there were some Benjamin Ritters. Dr. Benjamin Ritter raises some eyebrows and also ranks very well in SEO. Yeah, I learn through nuggets. I don't learn through a 500-page book of repetition. And the first book I ever written was actually for men, for dating and relationships and life. And it was a pocketbook. It was, hey, you're living your life. You need to remember the things that are important to you, like the things, the beliefs, the feelings, the thoughts that are strange, that are not embedded into your consciousness yet. So we're going to put them on one page. It's going to be a thought. It's going to relate to something that you're doing in your life, so it's going to be effective. And eventually, if you do that enough, it's going to become ingrained in who you are. And so this kind of concept of one page that resonates, that leads to action, has been a part of just how I've learned since, like, through my own journey, since, back in 2003, 2005, a long time ago. And I think that we complicate learning. Learning is accepting. I should preface this. Learning towards personal development or professional development is challenging your belief systems, testing new potential options out, and doing it in a way where without judgment, based on trying to achieve a specific goal. So the book itself says, hey, there's this thing you might be dealing with. It's a prompt, it's a question. It describes the thing that you might be dealing with. Are you dealing with this? Is fear getting in the way in this area? Very simply, like 3 sentences. If the answer is yes, then the book invites the reader to read the action. Well, if this is impacting your life, try this out. Now, it can be very difficult if someone is sitting in fear to try something new out, which is why there are 65 strategies that relate to becoming fearless in your life, because if you're not ready yet to try that out, there's probably something else that you are ready to try. And so it invites the reader to find that thing that resonates the most. It's just uncomfortable enough but not too uncomfortable, where they're going to take some action and try to create some change, to get curious, to then help them become a little bit more fearless. And anytime you become a little bit more fearless in your life, you become more comfortable with yourself, which then will help you become more fearless in every facet of your life. And if it was complicated, I think it would scare people. And we tend to make personal development very complicated. Do all these things, do these 17 things, when really you just need to do one new thing, and that's going to lead to so much more.
When you say fearless, I think a lot of people hear that and probably assume that it means you are without fear or you have less fear. And I'll share my experience is not so much that there is less fear, but it is changing your relationship with it. I'm wondering if that sentiment lands with you, and if you have, or if it doesn't, if there's anything you want to add to to further unpack that.
It's redefining fear. Fear is information. The word becoming fearless implies that it's a journey and it doesn't end, that fear exists, but it's how we interpret and perceive fear that matters. And I've heard this before, like fear is good. Fear is a warning sign. Fear is a symbol to pay attention. Fear is an indicator of potential growth in excitement and interest, or worry, safety. It's there for a reason. And I agree with those sentiments and those ideas. But what we need to do is to build a greater pause between the thought, the feeling, and the definition or the belief that something we should be afraid of it. We should avoid it. And instead say, oh, my body is physiologically reacting to this based on other experiences I've had in the past. Or it's, other labels I've had in the past. But this conflicts with what I want to achieve in my life. What do I want to do? Not what do I feel I should do. That's the biggest difference in how we need to perceive. I mean, every emotion. I mean, you could say that about passion, lust, anger, sadness. Like emotions are not truths. Fear is just lumped into that. And it's what we want to create in our life that becomes more important than the momentary feeling that we have.
Yeah, I love that it's classifying it as information, separating out the emotion from the belief or the truth that we, it doesn't even have to, the story that we are telling ourselves, um, which, as you referenced before, it seems like that is part of what creates our reality. Like digging, it's not so much digging the hole, but believing that you're in a hole, I think is something like that, is how you put it.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of, are you familiar with Viktor Frankl's work, Man's Search for Meaning?
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
stems from that. But I had a professor in grad school, uh, emeritus, I think is the official title. He was like 92 years old or something like that. They called him Yoda in the field of sports psychology. Um, and he taught us what he called the ABCs of change. And to me, it mirrors exactly what you're saying. But it's all about creating that gap, this space between stimulus and response. And the way he described it fundamentally was based on awareness, which I think is what you're talking about. It's
Mm-hmm.
redefining. It's having a greater understanding of education, information. It's all those things wrapped into one. But for him, he called it awareness, and he said, "See if I can get this right." He said, "When awareness precedes behavior, you have a choice. Uh, you can decide to apply effort and focus towards a goal." So those are the A through G. I think is where that takes us, and I think that is representative of
Beautiful.
what you're talking about.
Very, very much so. Very much so. For almost every emotion. I mean, we see this because we're talking to some coaches or people that are interested in coaching. Some of the emotions that prevent coaches from being successful are self-doubt, or fear of judgment, or worry that they're not good enough, of not wanting to sell or be salesy. Like these beliefs, right? These thoughts that we have that can completely just get in the way, build the wall between you and your clients to making an impact. And these emotions can be honored to say, I understand that they're there, but they conflict with what I really want to achieve in my life, or what we think we want to achieve, because the life of a coach, a lot of it is not coaching. What we think we want to achieve, the autonomy we think we're going to create. But we don't know that until we experience it. And so we need to kind of get through the muck of our own limiting beliefs and emotions that we're feeling to actually have the experience.
I really want to have the conversation about the business side of coaching and consulting, because I think that's part of what you're alluding to with when you say a lot of coaching is not actually, or a lot of being a coach is not actually coaching. And I 100% want to unpack that in just a minute. But there's one thing you said a little while back that I think would be really useful to get your take on. Uh, and I think it was part of your story of probably entering into this world. You said you had a leadership mentor, or is it fair to say leader, like a coach as well, or what was that relationship?
Yeah, he was my specific coach in a 16-month leadership training program
Okay.
that also was running the entire coaching program across 13 different hospital sites. And I got assigned, I actually accepted this program because I thought it would be good for my career, but I was checked out. I was going to work trying not to work. So a little serendipitous in how I ended up in front of this gentleman who ended up changing the course of my career.
I love that. And serendipity seems to have a role in almost everyone's career path. I've heard that story quite a few times, or versions of that word being used, and amazing that that is part of your story. Uh, and to dig into a specific part of it, something you mentioned was that this person helped you with was understanding that you or accepting that you are enough. I think that's roughly the word enough was in there. And then after that, you also talked about becoming and becoming better, be adding, accomplishing goals and everything else that you've become. I mean, there's so much of your story that we haven't even, and we don't have time to even explore all the fine details of all the milestones I'm sure that have been along the way after that moment. But if we just wrap all that up into one and call it becoming, and at the same time, just before that, that word enough, I think that that is a very, I don't want to use the word popular, but it is a very frequented feeling for a lot of people, especially in this space. The not feeling enough, not doing enough, being, whatever ends with enough. Can you explain or brainstorm even out loud how you strike a relationship between those two things in your life and for yourself, between being enough but then also striving to become, and to, because I think that the becoming
Mm-hmm.
word inherently, it's about more, or it's about next, or it's about, there's kind of a forward progress connotation, to that. So how do you manage that?
So I actually learned that I was enough after losing soccer. So it was my first ever professional interest and pursuit. I made the mistake, like a lot of people when they're trying to create something in their life, to take validation from something external of themselves. And like, if I achieve this thing, then I am great. I am good enough. And when you're playing a sport, well, one missed pass, one missed dribble, one missed shot, all of a sudden who you are to yourself becomes nothing and becomes terrible, and you become your greatest critic. And that leads to, you tell yourself that enough, you become pretty mentally scarred. And so when I lost the sport, or decided that I was finished with the sport, I didn't know who I was. So I placed my purpose. I thought something external outside of myself was my purpose. I placed it above me, which was the first mistake, because you create your purpose, so you're always above it. Nothing can be greater than you. And losing that part of myself made me realize that I needed to figure out who I truly was. And one of the first lessons from that experience was, oh, I am greater than anything I can decide to work towards. And if I am greater because than anything I decide to work towards, because I've created that thing, I've just defined it as important, then by default, I am always enough, personally, despite anything outside of myself. That was a light switch. And that led to me spending 4.5 to 5 years of figuring out who I wanted to be. And that wasn't even the goal. It was, wow, I've spent 20 some odd years of my life thinking I want to do this thing for this sport and believing it was more important than myself. I limited who I could be based on that thought, based on that belief that that purpose or that desire, that goal was more important than just exploring life. So I spent 4.5 to 5 years just exploring life without any sort of judgment of self. And that led to me having pure and utter confidence in who I was, because I realized that there was nothing to be afraid of. Risk didn't truly exist. I was going to be okay. I've already lost everything, so what is there left to lose? And that is such a freedom. But then after those 4.5 to 5 years, I was like, okay, I'm lost. Like I have no idea what I want to do with my life. I've had all these experiences. I'm fearless, but I have not become anything specific to then feel like I am going in a direction, or to value who I knew I was enough, but didn't completely and utterly value who I was. Because self-confidence comes from also understanding who you truly are, what you stand for, to such a point where you can walk into a room with people that have opposite beliefs and still feel like you are right, or you are you. And that was another journey of exploring, well, what do I care about? What, like, how would I define myself in terms of, like, if I could just show up each and every single day without having to work, like, what would I do? What would I study? What would I talk about? And so the idea of are you enough and becoming are separate to the point where you are enough because you exist. Now you have to get to that point. You have to end up believing that yourself through a variety of different practices and coaching or explorations. And then what you want to become is, well, because you are enough, that's one piece of the puzzle. Well, what do you just want to do with your day, with your life? Who do you want to connect with from a community perspective? What do you want to learn? What do you want to invest in? That option might be nothing. Like that's okay if that's what you choose and that's what fulfills you in some way, shape, or form. But the I am enough and what do I want to invest in? Those are two separate categories, and people tend to kind of combine them. Because no matter what happens in my coaching life, I am enough because I exist and I am me. I'm human. And that can be a difficult pill to swallow sometimes for people.
Yeah, I think that works. I'm trying to think of. I don't really have anything to add to that. I think you've expertly. Um, I think it's the most useful takeaway that I'm hearing from that is really just the separation of those two ideas, because I think conflating them, uh, tying them together, is what can mix people up and confuses to begin with.
Yeah, and adding to that, and so why is this? Someone might be listening to this and be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. It goes against everything I've believed in. Well, the things that you are generally striving for, maybe good grades or like being a good reader. I was a terrible reader as a kid, by the way. I had to go to special class for many years. Now I love to read,
I missed out.
and I have way too many letters after my name. But if or getting on a team or getting a certain job or having someone like you that you feel lust towards, if you base your self-worth, are you enough, on those things, you're you're kind of, well, one, it's an external validation. You can't control it. So, and that's separate. Like, you can't control this thing, so basing your self-esteem on it is just not a smart thing to do. But it also is playing by the rules of a society that you have been born into or that you currently live in. Because, like, let's say you were born in another country, you never would have had the chance to go to that school. What if you all of a sudden decide to move, quit your job, and go to another, live somewhere else? You wouldn't have those friends. You wouldn't have that person in front of you. Like, the things that you are trying to base your "am I enough" off of are a product of the choices that you've made to live where you are living and to work towards what you're working towards, which you could just say no to from now on. You could just vote out. You can opt out. You can go move somewhere else. And because it is a choice that, or an aspect of society that you decide to be in, how can it actually relate to who you truly are, or if you are enough, if you could just walk away from it all? You can't walk away from yourself. Like, you are you. You are the self-contained unit of, consciousness, of meat, of whatever it is, of thoughts and feelings and such. And so by believing in that, separate of your external environment, which you could just walk away from at any time, just from a logical perspective, makes more sense on why then you would define your sense of self-worth on yourself, not on the things that you can just say goodbye to that are temporary or are a product of your choices.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I relate to so much of what you're saying, and I was also I placed a lot of my self worth as a teenager on. I was a javelin thrower. That was my ticket out, and then I had injuries that I had to find a different ticket. um, so I can relate to a lot of that through experience, but then also, having that lesson repeated throughout my life. It's this. It reminds me of the comparison between. There's two different ways of saying this sentence. Saying who you are determines what you do, or what you do determines who you are. And I think that is a confusing space or circle to get lost in. But ultimately, um, whether we logic our way through it, or I think based on what you said at the very beginning of our conversation, one of the lessons that served me best, that I also learned through my master's program and sports psychology, was really just asking the question: does this help or does it hurt? Doesn't like Whatever the answer is, it's kind of just which story is going to actually best serve you, and let's just hang on to that one. Why not? And actually, I think it reminds me of, there was a note that I had written reading your book, and so to quote you, you had said a question can be more powerful and effective than any answer, which I think kind of hits on the same chord. And I'm seeing you nodding for people that are just listening. So is it fair to say that kind of, would you agree with that?
Questions are the path towards, if you're asking them without judgment, are the path towards feeling like you are enough or being able to compute, right? A decision that's going to lead you towards your goals. So that was written, like the question is more powerful than an answer is written because we generally don't really know what's happening. And by asking questions, we can learn more about ourselves. We can learn more about others. We can deepen our relationships. We can lead to greater solutions. Curiosity is, if there's one trait that I think is most important for any leader or person to have, curiosity without judgment is like a superpower. And that's why coaching is so effective. I was working with a client a couple weeks ago on confidence and just kept falling into this negative spiral. Like imagine this kind of like cyclone and water of negativity, and you just keep just jumping in. And making the choice to just jump in. And a large part of our work, because it was so bad and so strong, it was like pulling him under, is just to bring awareness to, oh look, there's another choice of jumping into the negative spiral, sucking you under. Oh, there's another choice. Because people are just sometimes not aware that they are creating like this negative vortex around themselves, about themselves and their life. And that it is, like you just said, it's a choice. Is this belief going to hurt me? Or what belief in this situation could help me? And there was some pushback, and it generally is, well, it's not, but why would I believe things that aren't true? And like, okay, we're going to talk about truth now for a bit. We have a couple hours on the fact that what you decide to believe is the truth that you define for yourself. And if you decide to believe that something is bad or something is good, that then becomes truth. The problem is, if we don't think that we're good enough, the truth that we believe is that we're underlying everything in terms of how we perceive the world is that we're not good enough. But by understanding that that's the truth that we've decided to live our life by, gives us the opportunity to change that. Slowly, but it can be changed.
Yeah, it comes back to awareness, and I think that's uh, the brilliance in your title. And I keep glancing over, looking at your book, "Becoming Fearless." Is, I think, another way of thinking about that as an outcome is really it's becoming an aware, enlightened, I guess is another way of saying it, but really an empowered individual, and which story, which narrative is going to best serve you and the people around you that you care about, and whatever sphere of influence you have. Speaking of awareness, we are up against the clock, and I wanted to talk about the business side that I think a lot of people could use more awareness about. And before we started recording, and the normal chit chat that goes on behind, for people that don't know, if you've never been on a podcast, there's always the before and afters. Um, I think it's fair to say we both have strong opinions about the path to becoming a successful coach. Maybe I'll just, if I could put it in those words. Do you mind sharing some of what those opinions might be, or some of your experience personally, or something you've observed or witnessed about this space in general that might be enlightening and help to raise awareness about what it takes to be a coach who is in business, has a business, is self-employed, etc.
Yeah. So I guess some of the gripes, like the grind my gears moments, which you probably can share, and anyone that's Googling coaching, listening to a podcast about coaching probably sees, is, first off, you need to get credentialed, and in a $5,000 to $10,000 program that helps you become a coach, because it is a skill that you have to continuously practice. Very little is very little conversation around how to build a successful coaching business, which is generally the goal. And if you don't learn the business side of things, then you generally have just learned some skills on how to have more positive relationships or greater self-awareness. And the business side of things, honestly, takes up 70 to 80% of my time. And that's content creation, marketing, sales calls, operations. Like those are the truths and realities of running a business. And a lot of people sometimes feel that they should become coaches and think that the only way to become a coach is to run a business, when you can leverage coaching skills or be a coach for other companies and other businesses. But if your goal is also to have the autonomy of running a business, which is debatable when I use the word autonomy, but I just mean that it's your own business, then you really should also be spending a majority of your time learning about marketing and sales, content creation, content editing, SEO, or hiring people for those types of things. And I've seen a lot of coaches get certified from a coaching program or want to become a coach, and then find out about this building a business piece and immediately get overwhelmed or discouraged, or try something for 3 months and then change their target market, and then try that for 3 months and then change their target market, and then try something for 3 months and change their target market. And then, because their friends have seen them being a coach, start being being a coach for coaches, because they see that as a market that they have access to. And all of a sudden, then they burn out. They realize that this was harder than they thought, and then they give up. And that, I guess, I think it all stems from just there isn't the conversation around what is coaching. What is a coaching practice? What is a lifestyle business? Or if you don't want a lifestyle business, how do you scale a coaching practice? What price points do you need? What types of products? What are the different components of building that business, from speaking to workshops to courses to books, which are not a moneymaker, by the way. People that are spending $50K on a hybrid publisher because they think their book is going to lead them to greater success. So I just like the kind of like, there should be a series on Netflix called like Coaches Talk or something, and maybe we'll get to that.
Maybe we can start our own series, Ben, and we can have you back and just continue this conversation, because I wish we had a whole nother hour just for this topic, because this is what myself, my now co-founder, we're really passionate about, because we've been coaches, we've been consultants, we've been in this space, in this industry, we've experienced the things that you're laying out, the hardships. And a couple uncomfortable truths that I've come to share myself is, number one, when I first started my first business, I didn't even know what an invoice was. I didn't know anything about business. And I think I made around $7,000 in my first year of business. And I remember thinking, I made more working part-time, working my way through college in a restaurant. What am I doing here? And, I stuck with it because, again, there was that passion and commitment to that space. But then as I learned more about the business side, I also recognized something else you talk about. I also could admit I don't have a credential. I have a master's degree that seems to align very closely to this CTI, Coactive Training Institute process or approach. But that's my experience, and I think a lot of people start to stack up the what I call alphabet soup at the end of their name, all the different credentials, PCCA, you know, different degrees and credentials and whatnot. When what you just laid out is that actually 70 to 80% of your success is going to come down to all of those other things, all of the business side of being able to continue coaching. If you aren't willing or interested in investing into those skills, it's going to be tough sledding. And I wonder what your thoughts are on, especially because I think a lot of your work revolves around career, um, and I'll just leave it at that, career path choice. Um, in my experience, there's a lot of what we call associate coaches, people who are contracted and are brought in to just do coaching for a larger organization. And obviously you are part of an operation. You are part of the margin. There is profit that is made on your on your labor. And I think people see that and they think, oh, I could be making 3, 5, 10 times the amount if I just did this myself. And I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, but I think I wonder if you can help to defuzz, to kind of clarify the line between those two paths, the like just doing coaching versus what you started to describe of all the other things that go into it. How would you, if
Mm-hmm.
you were coaching someone, let's just say, who was deciding between one path or the other, how would you guide them through that?
Yeah. And just one more image that came to mind as we were talking. It's this person that wants to start a restaurant. And so they're a really good cook. So they invest a bunch of money into a lease. They go into the building and they're like, great, I'm going to cook for everyone that walks in the door. But the kitchen's not ready for them. The place is a mess. They need furniture. There's no sign outside. No one knows they exist. It's like that's what a lot of coaches do. They invest a lot of money into getting, like, they have the skill maybe, and maybe they have the place, but then you're kind of like this empty building that no one knows that you're in, and you just sit there waiting for customers to come. And then you get discouraged and you wonder why your restaurant isn't flourishing. And there's all those other pieces that need to happen. And so if you are wanting to build a coaching business, part of that motivation, that spark, should also be learning to build a business. That's a cool skill that you can find a lot of motivation in, because like there's a 4-hour Alex Hormozy podcast of all his sales workshops put together, and I've listened to that 3 times. Like, do you have the motivation to learn how to, like, does selling get you excited? Does learning how to rank on the first page of Google get you excited? And if not, do you have money to pay someone to do that for you? That's kind of the two options. So there's the building of, like, does building a business, the idea of running your own business, no matter how big or how small, is that part of the dream? Or is the dream coaching? There's a difference, because if the dream's just coaching, then you have some contract opportunities. The problem in the market right now, there's a huge range of hourly pay for those positions. If you're a contract, from like $50 to $350 or more, that's a very large difference. The amount of clients will vary vastly depending on who they prefer to work with and the clientele that they're getting. So very little I don't know many contract coaches that can build a business from it, unless they're doing corporate enterprise consulting, which is very different generally than just coaching. And so then the other option is, because you're not going to make generally a living off of contracting, is to go work full time for a company as an internal coach, which they have, or to go work for a company that offers coaching full time, which those positions also exist. Now, depending on your salary goals, those generally are moderately paying. They're not like in an executive level or director level in terms of salary. And so you have to think about that. Now you can take on one of those positions and do contract and grow a business if coaching is what you're interested in, or if you do want to do it like on a part-time. But if you are considering coaching, take a look at rates, how much you need to live, if you want to work internally as a coach. Because what I've also seen unless you're an internal coach building coaching programs and managing them or managing other coaches, you are coaching. So imagine what it would feel like to coach for 30 to 40 hours a week. That is tough. That is
Energy drain.
pause. Yeah, you're given a lot.
Ben, I'm very conscious of time. I wish we had a whole another hour to talk through everything you just shared. I'd love to end on some rapid fire questions and close out and make sure you get out of here. Are you good with that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. If we were to zoom forward, I'm going to say 13 months, 14 months from now, because at time of recording, that would take us to 2026. Weird. What is one thing, if I could snap my fingers, guarantee that would be changed in your life? What is one thing that you would change?
I have 100 reviews on the book. I'm working regularly as a part-time executive coach with the CDC, which is just provided to me. And then there's another executive MBA leadership career coaching partnership that's coming up too. So I'm very excited about those. And honestly, my life is pretty great. One of the C's of self-leadership is control. And I've built a community and a lifestyle that truly just fulfills me. So other than coaching in some cooler places, I'm living me.
Love that. If everything that you have accomplished to date and for the rest of your life was completely gone, erased, wiped off the face of the planet, but you could just leave behind one truth, one learning that people saw that they just took it, they knew 100% that it was accurate and true for them and their world, what would that truth be?
The most important leader in your life lives within you. And I want to add subtitles, but I'll pause.
Okay. Um, that might have to be a part two because I think that's an awesome answer as well. Final rapid fire question for you. Do you think you'll change anything as a result of this conversation today?
Talking about your story and your journey and the things that you feel are important, such as you are enough, all those types. I think those are just great ways to reaffirm some of your beliefs of it. I think just keep talking about stuff. I mean, even with anyone listening to this, go talk to your friends about this topic. And just this past weekend, I was at an event talking about the hero's journey and like the meaning of life. And just like we don't talk about those things enough. We listen to a podcast maybe or read a book, but go have a conversation about it. So I think I'm just going to go have some more conversations. I appreciate it. It was a gift for me too.